Kim, and welcome to Esotouric's podcast, You Can't Eat the Sunshine, for the week of March 2nd, 2015. Join us this week as we talk with realtor Jack Nendel, president for Friends of the Historic Lafayette, about that hotel in downtown Long Beach. We'll also visit with Brian Kaiser, Southern California's tile expert, as he recounts the rescue, restoration, and prominent exterior placement of the massive tile mural of an Egyptian desert scene which formerly graced the dance floor of the Lafayette's rooftop ballroom. So stay tuned.
You can't eat the sunshine, but you can make a beeline for the best of the coastline. La 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 la. Skid Row, Solano Canyon, the Doria, and Pico Union, the long-lost neighborhood called Hermina, between South Pass and Highland Park, Grand Central Park. It is divine. You can't eat the sunshine, but it's a gold mine.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for listening to our podcast, You Can't Eat the Sunshine, for the week of March 2nd, 2015. This week, our two guests are Jack Nendel. He is a realtor, and he's president for the Friends of the Historic Lafayette. That is a gorgeous Art Deco gem of a now condominium, former hotel, first condo conversion on the West Coast, 1968. He's president of an association attached to the Homeowners Association, which concerns itself with preserving this beautiful structure. Our second guest needs no introduction to those of you that have listened, that are regular listeners. Brian Kaiser, but for those of you first-time listeners, I will indulge you. Brian Kaiser is the Southern California tile expert. He will be talking about a tile installation between the Lafayette and the Campbell being a contiguous contemporary structure to the Lafayette. We'll get into all of that, and it's appropriate. Reinstallation of a giant tile mural done by D&M Tile, ceramic company, from 1920, of a camel at the pyramids, at I guess Giza, a pyramid scene. Anyway, so this is a podcast episode about the Hotel Lafayette and architectural accoutrements attached to it. It's just Lafayette. It's a great building, and they're great guys. So, Kim, the Pishka Queen, please bring us up to speed.
I'm not a maven this week. All right, I'll be the queen. The Pishka, it's a digital tip jar associated with this podcast. You won't hear any ads on this podcast, but if you like what we do and you'd like to be a supporter, you are cordially encouraged to go to the podcast page and make a donation into the Pishka. We're always so grateful for the support of our listeners. It's never obligatory, always appreciated, and odds are if you contribute, it will make our adventures in Southern California a lot tastier, because we're noshers.
Okay, Kim, good, thanks. So, good job. Thank you. Okay, we have a lot to get through, so let's start. Okay, closely watched trains is the next section that comes up. This week, Kim, 527 South Broadway has become, has gone on the market. This is a 1931 Walker. Okay, so this is an interesting building, 527 South Broadway. It's directly across the street from the Mercantile Arcade.
537.
Did I say 527? I'm so sorry. 537 South Broadway. Art Deco, zigzag, great relief, bas relief, zigzag plates. Mr. Helen, last time I checked, still owned it. And Mr. Helen, of course, being the poster child for historic preservation in downtown. Mr. Helen coming into town about 20 years ago, maybe a little more than 20 years ago, and bought all these historic buildings on Broadway and wanted to tear them down. And then after talking to Donald Spivak and other individuals in the Community Redevelopment Agency and the City Planning Office, decided, oh my gosh, no, I'm going to save them, and has done a great job preserving them. So this building has been sold, I guess, several times at this point. And what's really interesting is that I didn't know it was a Walker and Ison building. so I'm really happy. I want to thank Roger Vincent for sending me the LA Times clipping from 31 announcing the destruction of the 1910 hotel on the site and the erection of the Walker and Eisen 6-story structure. When Nathan and I did that Walker and Eisen, the Calculus of Aesthetics walking tour a couple years ago, obviously being a free tour, the bar for research was happily a little less.
Like the bar for research with you two is ever less.
Okay,
it did slip through the cracks.
I remember this came up. We're just like, there's no list for Walker and Eisen buildings anywhere. So
the tour was only 19 hours long.
Right? it was
one of those death marches.
It was a 5-hour tour on a Sunday afternoon, and it was really hot. And but we looked at a lot of Walker and Eisen. So I'm really happy that, thank you, Roger Vincent, a business reporter for the LA Times. I guess he's real estate reporter for the LA Times, to dig into ProQuest and get the citation.
I think they have better search tools at the Times for their own ProQuest files.
I think
they must.
I don't know. I'm really happy. I know that both Nathan and I really tried every possible combination of Walker and Eisen in ProQuest.
But did you check Walker and Eisner? Anyway, you've seen this building if you've walked down Broadway, especially if you've been standing in the entryway of the Mercantile Arcade, better known as the Spring Arcade, that gorgeous glass-topped arcade that connects Spring and Broadway. Because if you're over on the Broadway side and you look straight out, you'll see, at least you have in the last few years since it was cleaned under Mr. Hellen's oversight, this extraordinary red and bronze zigzag modern Art Deco facade. It's a very, very unusual facade for that part of Broadway. It's a real,
very late.
It's late. It's jazzy. It's sexy, and super excited that it's changed hands, and the people who have it seem very excited about turning it into a fully used building, which is unusual in that part of Broadway.
So just to wrap it up, so people don't think that I'm a slouch. So this...
I don't think you're a slouch.
Okay, no one thinks I'm a slouch. Okay, so just because we're on the 537 South Broadway. Okay, so Richmond's took over the building in 1950. Richmond's being a 19th century men's suit import.
It start with an H, like Hertfeld or something.
No, originally it was Hartfeld, and then they left, and Richmond's took over. And in 1950, they did a remodel, and they took out a lease on the building. And for their 75th anniversary, a couple years later, they did a big party for it. So the building's gotten a lot of love. And
at some point, someone covered it in beige paint, but that's gone.
Right, but yeah, Richmond Brothers, of course, went out of business in the 70s, and I think their lease ran out in the 60s. Yeah, it's the typical. So suit emporiums, men's suit emporiums on Broadway, faded out in the 60s, and so it's the typical Broadway story. Ground floor filled with small retail spaces cut up. I think this was. This building is a great example because it was one of the buildings that had the entrance to the building gutted and put in a retail shop put in, so you could get to the rest of the building, but only from the alley. Yeah, so the proper building entrance was converted into a storefront because, of course, the upper floors were vacant. The upper 5 floors were vacant, and they were just getting income property off of the ground floors. The
most gorgeous Art Deco pigeon coop you've ever seen.
We're super excited. Okay, very excited. Next one, I'm working on this one for the tour book, so it's kind of interesting. It's come up. The Joya Cafe, better known as the Thelma Todd Cafe, better known as Paulus Productions, as the wonderful Mediterranean gem on PCH at Castellamare. This is that bridge, the pedestrian bridge over PCH just south of Getty Drive. The original Getty. It's been sold. Paulus Productions. So the Catholic Church got the building because Roland West's wife, who's one of the Lane sisters, I was in the singers, the Lane sisters. So Roland West owned the building, and of course Thelma.
Roland West, the son of a bitch who probably locked Thelma Todd, that gorgeous comedic actress, in a garage while she was drunk as a skunk, so she was gassed and killed.
cast by carbon monoxide.
Exactly. That guy.
Yeah, right. So Roland West, deathbed confession, he's dead. His widow has the property. She gives it to the Catholic Church.
Always a bad idea. They never keep this stuff.
Look to the Oviatt if you want a great example of Catholic Church stewarding a building.
Look to Mrs. Doheny book collection if you want an example of what the Catholic Church will do when you give them something good.
So the Joya Cafe, formerly the Thelma Todd Cafe, originally, just not wanting to show my hand too much, but the development company that developed that hillside, called the development Castellamare. They put in the pedestrian bridge. This is interesting because Alfonso Bell, that developed Bel Air, was involved in this, and he, of course, put a bridge in Bel Air. So they were kind of obsessed with bridges, and the whole idea was that you were going to have all these developments on that about for a mile, and every quarter of a mile you were going to have a pedestrian bridge, and all the people that owned the lots on the hillside, they bought the beach front property. Alfonso Bell owned the beachfront property. This was actually originally part of Inceland. Inceland being the frontier western set Thomas Ince had before he moved to Culver City. Anyway, so the shtick was Inceville. Inceville, yeah. Before Thomas Ince was convinced in 1915 to move to Culver City.
Anyway,
so they'll find this. So this beach strip was going to be communally owned by the people that own the property on the hillside. You had a pedestrian bridge, so the idea was you had your private beach, and you just walk down over the bridge, and you're there.
Probably in your bathing suit, right?
Yes.
Sounds
So
good. And you don't get hit by a car.
Exactly.
No matter how drunk you are at 4 p.m.
Right. They never built any more bridges, and you can go ahead and buy the tour book to find out the rest of this, but it's really interesting.
And now what happens in Malibu? All of the celebrities are drunk and having car crashes. Coincidence? I think not.
So the Catholic Church has sold the building. I imagine Paulus Productions will stick around for a while, but we're really excited. It's a beautiful structure. We're going to go with Brian Kaiser to do a forensic analysis of the tile, of course. We're going to wait for the people that bought it to call us back.
Well, we're going to hope for the best. It is not a historic cultural landmark. That doesn't mean someone listening out there in podcast land can't get to work on writing the landmark nomination.
I'm going to interrupt you, Kim. That neck of the woods has a pretty good track record for HCMs. Those of you, those listeners paying attention 10 years back will remember when the Marquez family put that last bit of land of theirs on Chautauqua up for sale with the old gas station.
And the cemetery in the back?
With the cemetery in the back. Citizens rallied, wrote an HCM for the gas station. Mm-hmm. Gas station got HCM'd. So there is, in the past 10 years, a strong precedence for local residents stepping up to the plate.
Right, but something to bear in mind. I mean, this is a property that when it went on the market, we were a little anxious because it's an extraordinary, gorgeous site, but they have no parking. Traditionally, if you see the vintage photographs, you'll see the oldie-timey cars parked in the front. Away. Well, no, not parked a mile away. I mean, you parked directly in front of the little stores that used to be on the ground floor of the Thelma Todd Beach Cafe, and you could maybe fit 8 cars in there, and those were old cars that were narrower. There was no parking, so really I'm hoping that the folks who bought this, who did get it for $2 million less than listing, and it only was listed in October, so it's a fire sale. Hopefully the folks who are listening intend to maintain it and not put in a large parking structure somewhere on the site. Okay,
they're not going to do that. Those of just to sort of round it out, this is a Raymond Chandler location in Farewell My Lovely. Raymond Chandler, Philip Marlowe goes to visit Lindsay Marriott. Walks up 237 steps. Of course, these are steps put in by the development company that developed Castellamare when they put in that pedestrian bridge.
There aren't that many steps anymore.
In the 60s, there were a series of mudslides on that hill, and the upper stairways have been washed away, and the topography, the streets. So when Thelma Todd was killed. Thelma Todd died in a garage on Positano Road, which is one street above the back entrance to the Joya Cafe.
But it's much harder to get there now.
Since 1958, with the first of the mudslides, it's become impossible to walk that. But back in the 30s, it was, it was a triviality. This was just what you did. And
because there was never any parking.
Philip Marlowe, when he goes to visit Lindsay Marriott, walks up 237 steps. And of course, the last 120 steps have been washed away. So, but it's still an important location, and you can see Thelma Todd's bedroom. If you go over the pedestrian bridge, if you're walking towards the hillside, on your left, there's a gate that's locked as soon as you get off the bridge, and that first
little
apartment you look into, that's where she lived.
Yeah.
And we're gonna move on, but it's an important structure.
I totally agree with you.
Okay, so Kim, just this is a throwaway one. You're going to handle it. SoCal, not a throwaway, but just a shout out. Mm-hmm. SoCal Connected did a nice piece on bringing back Broadway.
Yeah, well, it's really it was a video piece, less than 10 minutes long, really nice about the upward swing of retail along Broadway, all of the excitement down at the southern end regarding the Ace Hotel and up at the Grand Central Market, and then kind of pulling back a little and saying, how is this impacting the existing businesses, and specifically focusing on two retail tenants who've been in the Cameo Theater for many, many years. The electronics vendor in the central part of the theater, who has the entire theater as basically his storage unit, and the woman who runs the jewelry shop, which is just south of that storefront. And it's actually kind of heartbreaking to watch, because, these are families that have put enormous effort and energy into keeping Broadway alive, and have done, I think, a great job in having, reliable, worthwhile businesses there. And yet they're kind of getting swept out with the trash because there's no place on Broadway for small family retail anymore. You're either, developing some massive fancy pants.
I'm going to interrupt you. Okay, so this is...
I just said massive fancy pants and I stopped. Where am I going with this?
So what you're trying to say is that the buildings on Broadway are in such bad shape that the only way they are developed is if property owners like Mr. Helen, at the drop of a hat, literally without having to think about it, when they get a call so they need a tenant, they need a national retail tenant, because the property owners are invested in that. And they get a call, and they're like, oh, we need you to move the electrical connection to the city, the electrical connection to the power department. We need you to move it 10 feet in the basement.
Oh,
it's only going to cost $200,000, and Mr. Helen just says, oh, that's fine. We'll do it.
Because they got a 25-year, really high retail lease. That's what it is. But it doesn't mean...
And God bless Mr. Helen for just, without thinking, saying, yes, of course, do we have 3 months to do that?
Or you get the call that says, we want to buy this entire building for significantly more than you paid for it, and certainly than you've put into it, and then they flip the buildings.
Okay, well, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen, and we can't. We're not going to get into Broadway property owners selling buildings, because that's not the narrative. But what the narrative we're trying to get to is these buildings are in such bad shape. For tenants to move in, they really need the property owners on board to do major infrastructure investment, and they're just not interested because of all the buzz created by bringing back Broadway. They're just not interested in small businesses just making do with the spaces, and that's what's killing me.
And it's killing me too, because nobody knows if this bringing back Broadway buzz is really going to result in anything. The Ace is having some major legal problems. And the building's for sale. They may or may not still be there in a few years. They may not still be there next year. When this bringing back Broadway SoCal Connected piece aired, I linked it around on Facebook, and there was a conversation on a thread, and people were saying, well, is it really the best use of this historic theater for there to be an electronics vendor and a jewelry store? And my response was, well, yeah, if the alternative is maybe it being vacant and subject to further neglect by not being, the lights aren't on, no one's inside, no one notices if there are leaks, no one notices if someone's moved in. I said I'd rather keep the retailers than take a potential goat behind door number 3, because nobody's bringing these theaters back. The only way a theater is going to come back on Broadway as a theater is if a nonprofit is fully funded and invested in bringing it back. It's enormously expensive, and these theaters that are brought back in historic districts always operate at a loss. They have to be nonprofits. People don't go to the theater to see movies or to see live theater anymore like they once did. It just becomes basically a cultural asset that's created as a charitable entity, and I don't see anyone stepping up to do that.
No. So we need to leave Broadway because it's very complicated, and the relationship of property owners to leasing agents to potential tenants and existing tenants is incredibly complicated and bittersweet, and the saga has only begun. And on that topic, I will add as a note, why don't people have podcasts about what's happening downtown, Kim? The reason people don't have podcasts about what's happening downtown, I mean, we talk about it, but we're not really plugged in. We get these scraps of information that we get from the locker room conversation I pick up on the Los Angeles Athletic Club, or from Marco Ramirez, or from people we've come to know and recognize on the street and tackle and sit on them and make them tell us this 3 things before they run away.
I know what you're going to say. You're going to say nobody actually talks about what's going on because it's all really secretive, right?
Yeah. So it is. So the whole notion that Jen Perry is going to get on a podcast run by a real estate agent, a leasing agent, and talk about what's really happening. Like, this stuff no one's going to talk about it because it's all behind the scenes, really, really nothing anyone wants out there, and no one will do it because it's political suicide. So that's really the tragedy of Broadway. And I'm sorry to make another digression, but really, when we talk about Broadway and I get frustrated because there's a lot happening and no one will talk about it, and that's okay. There's nothing I can do about it. There's a lot happening, and just because no one's talking doesn't mean anything's happening.
And contrary to popular mythology, there is not a multi-billion-dollar wave of investment coming down Broadway. There are little pockets that are getting picked up. There are some buildings that are getting a lot of attention, and thank God. But at the same time, you have something like Figaro, La Nostra Figaro in the old Shaber's Cafeteria, which, everybody says they didn't
Too small.
Everyone says, they didn't really have it together as a restaurant. There were some ways in which, the service was very French. But the fact of the matter is they made beautiful pastry. It was a lovely room. They let people use the upstairs for gatherings. The bar was perfectly nice. It was a nice place, and it died. It died right there in the middle of the supposed hot zone. And I think it's making everyone think twice. And I think it would be a damn shame to throw tenants that have been there for 40 years, have customers who come back. When people come back looking for the woman who had the jewelry shop in the Cameo and she's not there anymore, how are they going to find her?
Okay, we're moving on, Kim. I know there's nothing to do. Okay, we're just witnesses. Okay, this has happened again. This has happened before. It will happen again for many incarnations of the world. It's just the path that we're always on, and that's good. Don't want to be anywhere else. So, Kim, we need to wrap this up, and we need to wrap this up with our last closely watched train, which is the newly launched website attached to the Office of Historical Resources for the City of Los Angeles, Survey LA.
Okay, I can take this on. Survey LA has been a decade in the development. We've done a podcast interview with Kim Whalen from the Getty Conservation Institute about this project, which was based on the open source Arches platform. And the idea is to be able to annotate a map and fill out a map with all sorts of details about historic buildings, not just officially recognized landmarks, but overlays for the HPOZ, the Historic Preservation Overlay Zones, buildings that are landmarked, buildings that are considered contributors to these HPOZs, buildings that are eligible for various landmark status, with the notion that all of the buildings within the city of Los Angeles, not unincorporated East LA or anything like that, just within the city of LA, will eventually be entered into this database and can be searched. For instance, if you want to find every Egyptian Revival building in LA, eventually, you'll be able to do that and make your own Egyptian Revival driving trip. Super important. I was really surprised, as you were too, Richard, to see it launch.
I haven't even begun to talk about my complete frustration with the site and lack of vision.
Okay, well, it launched very, very quickly, or very suddenly.
10 years in the making.
Right, last week. And it's not complete by any stretch. It admits it isn't. The hope is that by 2016 it will have all the data. I'm a little skeptical of that because it's such an enormous amount of information. And, you know, you and I did. We drilled in and we looked for some buildings that we feel very passionately about, and also we looked at some blocks that we're very interested in. And for instance, Charles Bukowski's bungalow on de Longpre in East Hollywood is, of course, listed. It's very easy to get those HCMs onto a map because the data...
But they're not all listed.
They're not all listed. But that's a building that is protected, and yet across the street, this beautiful bungalow court apartment complex, which recently had a lot of work done, happily by contractors who were sensitive to the history of the space, that wasn't listed. Also, down on Broadway in that 600 South block, which is just nothing but historic buildings. There's only 2 buildings listed on the block. Clifton's Cafeteria not listed on the block that it appears on. Bullock's not listed. The only things that are listed are the 2 theaters, the Los Angeles and the Palace. So, just kind of frustrated. I understand it's not a complete tool to be used to say these are all the historic and important buildings in the city. But developers are going to be looking at this map and saying, okay, this is a free ride for us on this block because there's nothing here.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to interrupt you, Kim. Okay, so remind me of CEQA in 30 seconds. Okay, it's 2015, okay? The Department of Building and Safety and the Office of Historic Resources needs to wake up and get to work. I don't care if I'm hurting anyone's feelings. I'm not kidding.
It's not about people, it's about process.
This is about machine-readable documents. I am talking about the Department of Building and Safety issuing machine-readable documents for demolition permits. I am talking about the Department of Building and Safety making documentation coming out of their office machine-readable so people can aggregate it. I am talking about the fact that Arches is a 10-year-old platform. The semantic web was invented 10 years ago. This Arches has the promise of being a semantic web application, and it's not because the City of Los Angeles doesn't have the wherewithal to program, create, and maintain a semantic web structure, which means it has inherent to it a trust metric whereby input from crowdsourcing can be trusted, vetted, and put into the site.
So you mean for every location I was finding that wasn't on there, I could have just added as long as I was there looking for it?
And under a proper semantic web application platform, yes. With a trust metric implemented, yes, you could. There is no machine readability. There is the Department of Office of Historic Resources came into being in 2005, and they've had about 10 years to get everything current assets into machine readable format, and they've done nothing about that because they're understaffed. And I don't care anymore. Because they're tearing down buildings, and people are like, oh, you should be mad at Tom Maine. Oh, you should be mad at so and so for tearing. No, I'm mad at the City of Los Angeles because it's ridiculous. They have a job to do, and they're not doing it. It's 2015. There's a lot you can do, and they need to start to do it. And I'm tired of hearing they're understaffed because there aren't going to be any historic buildings left in 20 years.
And when you say Tom Maine, you're saying that because Tom Maine, the architect, just bought Ray Bradbury's house, which, despite his incredibly disingenuous statements to the press until he was called on it, was marketed as Ray Bradbury's house and knocked it down a week in advance of the new ordinance, which would have required the neighbors to be notified. And it wouldn't have mattered if he had looked at Survey LA online or not. And I wonder if that's why they put it online. God, do you think it's the Tom Maine thing and the Bradbury house?
Of course it is. So the problem...
Let me finish. But Bradbury's house wasn't on Survey LA because Cheviot Hills, a historic neighborhood, doesn't have an HPOZ and has like 6 locations on it.
Ridiculous. So the problem, and beyond the fact that the City of Los Angeles is not prepared to program, develop, and maintain a proper portal for historic preservation as a semantic web application. They're not prepared to do that, which is tragic, and I'm sorry the Getty can't help them. The other problem is that by resources not being included in Survey LA and Survey LA being public, you now have the biggest problem, which is CEQA, protection under CEQA, and we can't even begin to explain what CEQA is. But it's intrinsically connected to draft environmental impact reports, environmental impact reports. These are for buildings that are not explicitly HCMs or under HPOZ protection. There's an overseeing agency that says, well, you have to do a draft environmental impact report about about a bunch of things, one of which is historic significance, and they always lie. The developer hires someone to write an environmental impact report, and the historic significance section is nothing because they just don't care.
That dog and cat hospital isn't by anyone important. We're the city of West Hollywood. We know.
Right. So it's upsetting because Survey LA is giving credence to historical assets in the neighborhoods, and people are going to be writing shitty environmental impact reports.
You just cursed.
I just cursed. I don't care.
No, you're right. And the other thing is, and this is the thing that drives me so crazy, is if you spend any time on Facebook, you'll find that there are multiple extremely passionate, active Los Angeles history and architecture pages that are run by various well-meaning people, and pictures go up of historic buildings, and 40 people have something to say. And all this data and information
because it's not the semantic web, because Facebook, which came out of the semantic web, the Web 2.0, this explosion which occurred about 2004 when we first started dating Kim, Facebook explicitly made themselves a walled garden and kept everything inside. And this, I'm deeply frustrated that people use Facebook because it's no way to share information. And
they're not there to share. They're sharing information in the only way they can,
right?
Because no one has invested in making an open source, non-walled garden space where this kind of communication and data sharing and conversation can happen. And if the city is really serious about Survey LA being something that's going to be used and is going to be meaningful and is going to help save buildings and help raise consciousness, they have to hire some programmers. God, with all the money the city has. Or, start one of those damn nonprofits.
Don't start a nonprofit, Kim. Okay, we're done.
Make Survey LA social, make it fun, let people contribute, have some training sessions, and when people finish the training session, give them a password and let them contribute.
Kim, that's not what a trust metric is.
I know it's not a trust metric, but it's...
Kim, it's a trust metric or it's nothing at all, and we're not here to talk about trust metrics. Okay, we've died that death in so many offices in Beverly Hills back in the aughts. Okay, and that's good. And in offices of the Los Angeles Times in the aughts.
And the internet still
we're done.
Sucks. Okay,
the internet doesn't suck, and thank God net neutrality passed. Okay, done with everything.
No, you forgot one thing.
No, we didn't. Tim.
Give me the mic. The Clark Library, which is part of UCLA and the Portuguese department in West Adams, which we love.
No, okay.
Stop it! I'm talking.
Clark is supervised by the Department of 17th Century Studies and Portuguese. Okay, it's a very odd thing. It came in before
Stop it! You said we have
UCLA
no time.
really became UCLA as we know it. It was still an extension of Cal.
Thank you. Anyway, this beautiful, amazing library in West Adams is shutting down in April, so get over there if you want to see it, because it's a pretty serious one-year shutdown. There's some earthquake retrofitting, there's some basement storage being put in, but they're also building a new entrance pavilion, which sort of terrifies me because it's one of the most beautifully situated buildings. Yeah, so let's go and put our hands on that facade a few times before.
I've been back and forth with Victoria Steele. We're going in a couple of weeks to see her. Okay. I didn't realize they were closing, but we already have agreed via email that will be out in March.
Good.
Okay. Can we have to move on?
I tried to, Richard.
Okay. March 15th. Sunday, March 15th, we have a forensic science seminar, and Kim, please give us a minute. Give us a minute on this.
While you cough your poor little lungs out, darling. Yes,
I'm not coughing my lungs out.
You have to stop smoking. Quarterly, we, Richard and I, under the guise of Lava, host these forensic science seminars with Professor Donald Johnson.
Professor Donald Johnson. Yes. He's a mortician and investigator. He has a master's in biology. Former forensic investigator for the LASD. He's not doctor. It's okay. I
stumbled. Anyway, we do these at Cal State Los Angeles as part of the fundraising efforts for the criminalistics department. He trains the graduate level criminalists, and they develop all sorts of new forensic science tools that are going to end up in the courtroom. So if you're a writer and you're writing, police procedurals with forensic science scenes, you definitely want to come down and hear what the cutting edge science is going to be by the time your next book comes out. You might blow some minds. You can also hear from working forensic investigators and also true crime writers and researchers. We bring the best people in. And Hot Lead and Hot Leads is a 2-lecturer program on 2 subjects, ballistics and how you investigate a murder behind bars in the county jail system. We would love to see you there. It's only $36.50 for the afternoon, and that buys a lot of DNA kits, kids, so buy your ticket today.
It's a lot of fun. Okay, I'm going to quickly get us out of upcoming events and into the interviews. Okay, coming up, end of March, March 29, Nathan Marsack, Lava Visionary of the Year 2015, is giving his Lava Visionary of the Year talk, what I hope will be first of at least one more talk for the year. Nathan will be giving a talk on the rise of Richardsonian Romanesque in Los Angeles as a major architectural trend, which of course eventually gives way to the Mission style, which is of course what Los Angeles adopts as its style. And that journey is deeply fascinating, rich and interesting, and lots of rich veins that seem quite tangential and then magically appear to take you to the mother lode. Sign up. Sign-ups are going fast. We're back at Library. We're not back. We are at Library Bar now for the Lava Sunday Salon. It is the last Sunday of every month. Library Bar is 6th and Hope.
And we're there because Figaro closed on Broadway.
No, we're there because Johnny Valenti is a great guy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Johnny Valenti is a great guy, and that's why we're at Library Bar. God bless him. We are back at Library Bar indefinitely, giving these salons. So this month is Nathan, Richardsonian Romanesque in Los Angeles in 19th century. April, Joan Job Smith. Joan Job Smith is a colleague of Charles Bukowski's. Joan Job Smith is going to be talking about her memoir, Tales of an Ancient Go-Go Girl. It's her memoir. It is about all the pain and shit of her life in the 60s that she somehow survived and got herself into a Master's of Fine Arts writing program at Cal State Long Beach, became very close with Charles Bukowski, who obviously, absolutely, inextricably fell in love with her and just worshipped the ground she walked on and worked with her a great deal, and then through all of that. So, she's great. Come to that. These are all on the website. We have to start moving. Kim, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, these salons are limited to 100 people, and they are filling up ahead of time. So if this is the kind of thing you want to be part of, schedule your last Sundays of the month in advance, or you won't be able to get in. And we would love to have you be part of these if that's the kind of thing you'd like to be part of. Right.
It's 2 to 4, and they're not like salons of the past where we've had a lot of AV. These are really more conversations. Joan is going to read a poem. She's going to talk about her memoir. We're going to take a break. Someone's going to buy her a drink. People are going to talk to each other. We're going to get back in, read a poem, talk about go-go dancing through the Watts riots. But really, we're trying to break things up, and because that's what I want. Okay, this is what I want, and this is my response to the salons going where they were.
And because we've left Broadway, we were so worried about Broadway, we felt compelled after almost every salon to race out into the street and lead these walking tours, exploring some of the changes that are happening on the street and pointing out these incredible historic resources. We're not on Broadway anymore. And so the salon ends, and we're staying put, and we hope that people will stay put and enjoy the lovely environment of the Library Bar and get to know fellow Lava attendees and, enjoy some of those French fries. They're awfully good.
Yeah, they are. Okay, interviews. You got to get to them. Okay.
Please.
Okay, we're interviewing Jack and Brian. Okay, Brian's last, so I'll introduce him first. Brian Kaiser. Brian Kaiser, Southern California tile expert, lives in Rufus Keeler's home in Southgate. This was the showcase for Calco. Rufus Keeler was, when Calco, his own pottery, went bankrupt in the mid-1920s, he was hired by the Adamson family to run Malibu Tile, which is where he's probably best known, though I think his best work is with Calco. Rufus Keeler is incredibly important through all of Southern California's development. His connection to Bertrand Goodhue and the 1915 Panama exhibition and Goodhue's work. What?
In San Diego.
In San Diego, Balboa Park. His work with Goodhue, Bertrand Goodhue's work at that exhibit, and then Goodhue coming back, Caltech, LAPL Central, is huge. Okay, Brian's a genius. There's a billion things you don't know about tile, that he does, and we get just a snippet. We get these little snapshots whenever we put the mic in front of him at an amazing tile installation. So that's what we're going to do with him at the Camel, which is between the Campbell and the Lafayette. And so Jack, of course, was integral. He gets integral to both these interviews. The Camel wouldn't have happened without Jack's work. Brian, okay. So that's Brian. Second interview, Camel. Great. First interview, Jack. Jack is president of the Friends of the Historic Lafayette. This is a nonprofit associated with the Homeowners Association. Jack, I'll get into all of that. Jack is a great guy. He's also a realtor. He's been a realtor in Long Beach since the early 80s. His office is in the Lafayette.
If you want an apartment in the Lafayette, he's an awfully good person to give you a tour.
The Lafayette's really damn beautiful, Kim. It's like...
I'm obsessed with that little sunroom at the top.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to move into the Lafayette and start doing yoga in the sunroom, and I don't even do yoga.
Yeah, okay. So Jack is great. So we'll start with Jack, and Jack's just going to take us by the hand and go through the history of the Lafayette and the Campbell, which is next door, which is their buildings are about a year apart, and just the whole process, condo conversion, became a Hilton sold it, condo conversion, then his role in helping get the Camel tile out. He's a great guy. Okay, so we'll move into our interview with Jack right now, and we'll begin this episode, which is entirely devoted to things in, around, and about the Hotel Lafayette in Long Beach, the Art Deco gem. Jack, I'm here with you. We're in front of a beautiful fireplace at the Lafayette in Long Beach, California, and I'm going to ask you to properly introduce yourself and what it is you've done here, which is a lot.
I am president of the Friends of the Lafayette.
Say your full name. Yeah.
Okay. I'm Jack Nendel, and I'm president of the Friends of the Lafayette, a historical group that was established back around 2004. And I also maintain my real estate office here in the Lafayette in one of the office condos.
Right. Perfect. And so before we jump in, because we have a great question to start with, before we jump in, because this is a podcast, only audio, people don't understand that we're standing inside of an Art Deco jewel. So just before we get started, explain to them what the Lafayette is and what it looks like and why I'm just keep picking my jaw up off the floor.
Okay. The Lafayette is a historical building that consists of 3 buildings. The first building, called the Campbell Apartments, was built in 1928 for the wealthy of Southern California. In 1929, the Lafayette Hotel opened up the same week as the stock market crash, and in 1948, the Lafayette Hotel built an expansion of the building, of the hotel, called the Broadway Building. In 1952, Hilton bought all 3 buildings and ran it as a Hilton Hotel from 1952 until 1967, sold it to private investors, and this became the first condo conversion on the West Coast in 1967. The Lafayette Hotel, the main building at 140 Linden Avenue in Long Beach, is in the style of Art Deco. It's just a beautiful jewel. People who are well-versed in Art Deco says is probably the best example of Art Deco in the city of Long Beach. It's just a fabulous building. The Campbell building, which preceded by a year, is a Mediterranean Renaissance type style and completely different. And the Broadway building, built in 1948, was modeled after the international style, which was very popular in Europe at that point in time.
Right. Perfect. Okay, good. Thank you. You set that up. We have people's complete attention. Have you always been interested in historical buildings, Jack?
I probably always appreciated historical buildings, but I never realized what it took to maintain them. I can recall that on my first trip to Europe, and particularly London, I was in a pub, and you see a plaque on the wall saying, gee, this building was built 300 years ago. Isn't that cool? And I've always admired and respected the older buildings, but I never realized what it took to maintain them. It wasn't until I had a business trip in the late 70s to Algeria. I'd spent 2 weeks on a business trip to Hassi R'Mel, about 325 miles south of Algiers, and on the return trip, I stopped in Rome for the weekend. And as all visitors, you go to the Colosseum and the Forum, and you can appreciate the efforts they made to maintain their historical structures. And I could only help and think at that point in time, Jackie Kennedy Onassis was co-chairperson of a committee to save the Grand Central Station in New York. And when I really appreciate it, it's not easy to maintain historical buildings. People want to always tear them down and put up something new and modern.
Perfect. Okay, so you picked up the banner early. So good. So you've been in Long Beach since the mid 1980s.
I moved to Long Beach in 1988.
Okay. Perfect. And so this is such a great building. There has been outreach to the community in terms of getting the word out about what a beautiful place this is. Do you want to talk about the walks through history? And maybe that'll be a good way to just, in general, you've worked with the Art Deco Society. I mean, this building is a showcase, and it is open to the public. So I want people to know that.
That's correct, and this building often is included on the monthly tours that the Long Beach Heritage or Group take is one of their primary focal points. Back in 2006, we initiated a walk-through time where we open up about 14 to 16 of the homes to the public because the owners of units within these three buildings have done some remarkable things with the units themselves. And we were assisted by the Art Deco Society, who dressed in period clothing, had cars from the period, and we had a walking tour of the three buildings. And we did it in 2006, 2007. Hopefully we'll do it again sometime in the future to open up this great complex to many people who otherwise may not see it.
Perfect. And so thoughts have wings. So let's hope this goes forward. I know it's not open to the public, but something for people to look forward to when at some point in the future when this is open. You have a museum, which you have a collection of some arcana. Do you just quickly want to talk about that, because it is really nice?
When we started to prepare for the walk-through time, we realized we had collected many items from the years that were representative of the Lafayette when it was a hotel, and the Campbell Apartments, and we took the opportunity to create a separate museum of these items. We still have to find an effective way to make it available to the public, but it's a collection of portraits, stonework, photographs, postcards from the hotel, all types of different things.
Perfect. So you've given us a good sense of what these three buildings are. These great, two of them pre-war gems, Art Deco gems. Do you want to give us? I don't know if everyone knows what a great corner, what a great couple blocks for beautiful historic buildings it is down here on Linden. Do you just want to take a second and let people know that if they like old buildings, you should probably get on down here and grab a cup of coffee and take over a stroll?
Across the street from us on Linden Avenue is an apartment building, Broadland, which is just a beautiful structure. And diagonally across from that on the corner is a building which is used as temporary housing, for lack of a better word, but it too is a gem. We are located in the East Arts District, so there's quite a bit of activity in the area. It's bustling with different types of shops on the retail side, and it's just a great lively place, and it's within walking distance of everything in Long Beach that's important.
Perfect. Before we wrap this up, we cannot forget the tile mural, which you played a very big part in preserving. So why don't you describe to us this beautiful, harkening back to North Africa, your own experience, this beautiful North African scene?
Well, we back in the spring of 2008, we had a water encroachment problem in the original building, the Campbell building, and when the workmen started to remove the the roof material under about 12 inches of tar, asphalt, sand, dirt, you name it. They found this mural, which was pretty dirty, but seemed to be in reasonably good shape. It was an 8-foot by 8-foot mural depicting a camel lying in front of some pyramids. And it was signed by the artist, Mr. Torres, who was the chief ceramic head of D&M Tile. And based on the research that was done, it appears this may be the only particular mural that he actually signed. He was active throughout the community. The company was around from about 1926 to about 1937, 1938, and it was just a beautiful piece of work. The workmen were kind enough to bring it to our attention, and we knew we had a gem on our hands. The Friends of the Lafayette applied for a grant from the Long Beach Navy Heritage Foundation of close to $15,000 to restore the tile. When the Navy left Long Beach in the early 1990s, they set up a foundation for nonprofit. So it gave us a great opportunity to provide the funds to restore the mural. And we went through a bunch of hurdles to get the approval of the city to mount it where it is on the outside of the building, and it just looks fantastic.
Perfect. And you wrote that grant, I believe.
Yes, it was my only grant, and it's one of those things, I'll never do it again. You know, if you do it once and it's good, go for it.
All right, Jack, thank you. So let's wrap this up. This is, I think you've whet people's appetite. And now I think you mentioned you do represent properties in this building. You are a real estate agent, so let's hear it. Let's hear your pitch.
Okay. This complex in the 3 buildings consists of 159 residential units and 12 office condos. And I was fortunate enough when I got into real estate 11 years ago to buy an office condo on the 2nd floor of the Broadway building, and that's where I run my real estate practice out of. So if anybody is interested in real estate, either in this building or historical buildings in downtown or anywhere in the city, just let me know.
Jack, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
My name is Eric Lopez. I'm a city planner for the City of Los Angeles Department of City Planning. I'm here in City Hall, and you're listening to You Can't Eat the Sunshine.
Brian Kaiser, I'm here with you. We're actually at Bob's Big Boy in Downey, and in spite of that, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself properly and get us started on the topic at hand, which is the camel mural in Long Beach.
Okay, hi there. My name is Brian Kaiser. I always introduce myself by saying that I'm the owner of the home of Rufus Keeler, who was the manager of the Malibu Potteries, and after 30 years that prompted me to go into a life of tile, I guess is what you would call it. And Richard has asked me to talk about a wonderful, wonderful custom mural, an 8-foot by 8-foot mural of a camel before the pyramids in the city of Long Beach. So, do you want me to just do the story? Okay. Some years ago, I was telling Richard, I'm not going to give years because I just can't remember, but not quite yesterday, but some years ago, I get a call from a friend in Long Beach who says that there's a small periodical newspaper, like a weekly throwaway or something, with a color picture of a wonderful mural, this amazing mural that was, quote-unquote, uncovered from a building or under this or under that. I couldn't quite understand, but it was at the at the Campbell building, which is part of a complex called the Lafayette Complex. 3 old hotels, the Campbell, the Lafayette. Lafayette is one of the most magnificent Art Deco structures you'll ever see in L.A. County. And then a third one, we don't care because it's from the 50s at any rate. But anyhow, it's an historic complex, and this was the Campbell building. And I make some phone calls and get over there for a little visit. And incredibly enough, and this really is one of these great urban archaeology, really, really a great urban archaeology story. The Campbell building had a leak from the top floor down to the whatever the where the penthouse was or wherever, and so obviously there was trouble there. They had to get a new roof, so they went to get a permit from the city, and the city came out and said that I think that was 26 or 7, don't quote me, that Campbell Building was constructed, and they said, we don't have any record of anybody getting a permit to go right back down to the substructure and come back up, with a new, quote-unquote, new roof. So we think there's been roof after roof after roof after roof after roof laid on top of each other since 26. We cannot find any record of anything else. So they did a core sample, and sure enough, there were like 10 million layers of roof that they pulled up from the core sample. So in fact, all they had done is just put one on top of the other. I can't remember the estimate. Jack might remember the estimate. It was something like, I don't know, 10 tons, 12 tons, whatever. Tons and tons and tons of material is now on the top of this building. And most roofing, roll roofing and things like that is actually a fuel source in case there's a fire. Once it gets going, it's a petroleum distillate product. Wow, it's going to explode. So the city was very, very concerned, and they said, well, of course you can have a new roof, but man, you got to go right back to the original substructure.
And we're going to make sure that you do.
Yeah, and you must. You just, for safety's sake, for everything else, it's time. This is time. You got to do it. So and then we'll give you the permit at that time. So they start in, and they told me later it was funny because there'd be one layer where the roof used to be a garden. There was dirt. Then there was one layer where there was some sort of rustic tile. Some was roll roofing. Some, then there was something else. So it was like it really was archaeology of just layer after layer. But at one point they struck Italian tile in a very formal geometric pattern with diamond shapes. So there would be like a red quarry tile with black diamonds in the corners. And this is almost like a European, it's a very formal, sort of a European kind of a floor. So there was roll roofing on top of that with the black, mastic, the glue. And God bless the demolition people. Jack and I both often said, initially it was the demo people that cared enough. There was a project manager there. He stopped everything. Because usually demo people are there to demo things.
They're done.
That's their job. Get it done and throw it down the chute.
3:30, we're done.
That's it. We don't care. We don't care. And this is how a lot of things are destroyed. It's the way a lot of things are destroyed, right? Matter of fact, a lot of things are destroyed we don't know about because the demo people just want to finish their job. They don't want to be stopped. They don't want to be bothered. They don't want trouble. Well, the project manager, my understanding, was there, stopped him and said, hold on, guys. Let's try to be a little bit careful now. Get some different tools and try to go across. Let's not disturb this floor. Let's just scrape somehow, chisel and scrape this roll roofing away. And sure enough, there was kind of a separation point. They were able to do that. And there's more and more and more of this tile. But when they struck the middle of the roof of the building, this is open air. This is just open air now, right?
12 stories up.
Yeah, 11 or 12, right? 11 or 12 stories, right? Exactly. And so when they reached the middle of the roof, all of a sudden the tile became much more colorful, beautiful, blues and reds and yellows and all sorts of things and beautiful, patterns. And they got through two rows of that at least, and all of a sudden here's this mural in the middle of the border tile is a mural of a camel sitting on the ground with a beautiful, very colorful saddle, with the red and blue and orange and yellow and the tassels hanging down from his harness, the works, right? Right. And here are the great...
T.E. Lawrence crossing the desert into Aqaba.
Yeah, exactly. And behind him are the Great Pyramids. So they stopped, they cleared away everything else, but they left that layer of floor, which covered the entire building, and they started to remember the roof of the Campbell building was originally the Starlight Ballroom. And if you imagine today, if you looked out to the bay, even for the Campbell building today, if a few other buildings are not there, there would have been a straight view, a beautiful, beautiful view, especially like on a moonlit night or something, of Long Beach, of the harbor, Long Beach. So it was the Starlight Ballroom. So they figured what we were looking at is the floor of the dance floor. Yeah. Because what you had was half of the roof was open to the air, and then half of it was what is now a penthouse was closed in. So possibly the enclosed portion was like maybe the restaurant portion, right? And then you would go outside where all of a sudden you're in your 11th floor, wide open, overlooking the harbor, and this is where you could dance and have an orchestra and the whole thing. And this beautiful mural was in the middle. So we're looking it over, and the border tiles definitely look like D&M, which is Davies and McDonald, a Los Angeles company that's survived up until 39. They were in business a long time. But under a rock, it was hard to see with all the black mastic. Under a rock on the lower hand side, it said C, the letter C, Torres, Torres. Actually, we couldn't make it out initially, but we just, we knew it was signed. It's unusual to find a signed mural, So, anyhow, one thing led to another. Sergio Torres was the last muralist, the chief muralist of D&M, and was actually still working for them in 39 when they ultimately went out of business. But he pretty much did all the mural. The other ladies would do the regular tile decorating, but Sergio Torres was the man who did the murals of all sizes, And this was obviously very large, the biggest D&M mural that I think anybody knows of. And also interesting is the fact that it's the only thing we, quote unquote, we know of that he ever signed. We know who he was, but most things weren't important enough. They were just, he was just producing like any worker. He's just producing his craft every single day. But this mural he considered important enough to, to sign. It's the only thing he ever signed. So there it is. So this progressed into, well, what are you going to do, with the building? So Jack Nendel, I think his title is president of the historical committee of that, of the complex, of the Lafayette complex, was involved almost immediately, of course. And of course the issue is, preservation is a great thing, but somebody has to pay for it. So we had to figure out, how do they want to save it? How do you save it? Who's going to pay for it? There was a very brief period of time I might have been able to, I would have purchased it myself rather than let it be destroyed. But that period of time didn't last very long. And but it couldn't stay where it was,
right? Because
the penthouse now belongs, it's privately owned,
right?
So why invest this money when it's other people aren't going to be able to come up and see it? In a sense, it belonged to the building, but it didn't really belong to the other. It wasn't like something in the lobby,
Right.
It's up in the penthouse. So anyway, so Jack raised the money within the complex to pay a friend of mine and I to go up there. It took us a week, and we extracted the mural with, of course, if you can imagine, the roof. I mean, the mortar bed that thing was on was unbelievable, So we got it out in about a week, and they had enough money for that. God bless them, they raised, because at the moment, that's what we had to do.
Right.
That was the initial thing.
Right.
Just get it out, get it protected, and then let them put the new roof on, because they had a leak. They had a major leak up there, So that's what we did. We stored it in one of the vacant rooms. We piled all the floor slabs up, in one of the vacant rooms. And then Jack had to stop everything because there was no more money. There was enough money for that, but there was no money to clean it. Or you have to build a frame. You have to get it mounted. A lot more money had to be spent. A lot more money, But now it's saved. Now it was safe. We could take some time. And I don't remember how long it was, but Jack worked very hard. And as I was saying earlier, Jack really, I did a lot of the physical work, and my friend did a lot of the physical labor, but it was really Jack who pulled everything together in terms of keeping people together and communicating and keeping this going and keeping these people interested and seeing that people cared. Because this is not, a lot of people don't care. They just don't care to take this money in this time. So Jack tried fundraisers, he tried various things, and finally he made an application to the Long Beach Naval Grant, to the Naval Grant.
Because when the Navy left Long Beach,
yes,
they established this trust for people to apply for things to do in the community that were helpful to the community.
Yeah. So, and this is exactly what it's for, is to help with cultural things, culturally beneficial to the city, artwork, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a wonderful grant that is there for people who can qualify. So that's what he did. So by doing that, he raised enough money for us to clean the tile, repair the tile. Some tiles were damaged, after all those years. Then a wrought iron frame had to be created, and then it had to be mounted on the wall. So all these phases were going over quite a few years. So eventually we chose a place. Thank God we were kind of lucky. I think this was a really, really good choice. Nobody wanted to change the facade of the Campbell And for God's sake, you wouldn't change the Lafayette is just so perfect, the way it is. So luckily, there's a little annex, almost like a big hallway, where the Campbell and the Lafayette are joined together. The lobbies are joined together. And so it was there in, I think, the 60s or 70s, totally plain. And guess what? Above the double doors you go in is this big open space, just this big open space. So we've got this great nondescript area, and yet it's adjoining both buildings, wide open, and it was absolutely perfect, second floor level for the mural. And they liked that also because they didn't want graffiti. They didn't really want it on the first floor in the case of any kind of graffiti. So so through all these steps and all these things that I was involved in a lot of them either directly or indirectly, but Jack, kept it going and found the money and kept things going, and so it was mounted on the second floor and it was put up there. So there it is today on Linden Avenue. Yep. So anybody can drive down that street and see it, but that's the story of where it started and how it survived and was put where it was. And just a little bit of an aside, because I'm not sure if everybody got a joke out of what I did or not. We had to appear before the Cultural Historical Commission of the city, right? And Louise Ivers, I didn't know Louise, but Louise, of course, was on the commission.
Dr. Ivers.
Doctor, I'm sorry. Excuse me, pardon me. Dr. Louise Ivers, PhD. So Jack and I go there, one night, and somebody, I don't remember if it was on the board or some third party, had lodged a complaint against mounting the camel over that little annex. Well, we thought it couldn't be more perfect because the annex had nothing to do with either building. Nobody was touching, the two buildings. So we felt very good and very confident, from the beginning. Somebody was complaining that it was, I can't remember what the problem was. It was distracting, or it was inappropriate, or it wasn't there originally and it shouldn't be there. So somebody literally had made a formal motion that the camel be put down the alley, halfway down the alley of the Campbell building on the south side. Now, let me tell you, if we had done that after all this work, and you're talking about a mural that, I don't know if the word is priceless, but I mean, this is a custom mural, this is a one-of-a-kind, never produced, D&M, D&M, Esotouric, mural. Once it was down, halfway down that alley, frankly, nobody would ever see it again. And once in the alley, you would have had to walk down the alley and then look up, like this, and break your neck, and so nobody would ever have any true perspective of the mural again. And so, so Jack told me about this the day before we went to the meeting, and he said most of the committee is in favor of putting it on Linden, but he said somebody has made some complaint. So he said that's one of the things we have to respond to today. So I rushed to my computer, and I did my own protest against the alley, asking that the camel go out there, and I did it in color, and I had, so on the front sheet, on the very front sheet, I did a blow-up of the face of the camel, and above the camel, in great big block letters, I wrote, "Please do not bury me once again down the alley of the Campbell building. I want to overlook Linden Avenue and see the sun in the sky of Long Beach and enjoy my new home." So, and then I did a formal paragraph by paragraph and point, because Jack sent me a copy of the complaint, and I responded to every aspect of the complaint. But the cover was the face of the camel in color, and the camel's very funny. He's missing a tooth.
Oh, yeah.
You can't see it from down below now. I thought that was so cute. Yeah, one tooth is missing. He's got a broken tooth. And we didn't know until we cleaned that specific tile, because there was the black cedar was on, And I thought that was so charming. I thought it was so charming that he's got this one tooth missing, So he was so funny on the face of this thing I put together, this little binder I put together, and I made enough copies for everybody. But then my little thing about "don't bury me again down the alley," and they didn't know me, so they handed out. Jack got it, and he said there are copies of something there for you from Mr. Kaiser. So they handed. I wish I had a picture of the looks on their faces, because they're very serious, this is very serious people, and I wanted them to smile or laugh or whatever, and see the camel's face, and then sort of take that, into consideration. And I'm not sure if they. Well, I mean, they were being professional, so Nobody laughed. Let's just put it that way. But whatever the case, the vote was unanimous to put him on Linden. Okay. So there was no problem. I was concerned for a while, but there was no problem at any rate. But I think the camel's face with the broken tooth helped us get through that. So there it is today. There it is today. And so what a story of urban archaeology, as I say. And if you stop to think about that, how many other buildings in Long Beach or downtown L.A. or God knows where?
I can think of the Oviatt for one.
The Oviatt, yeah, that was sure, because the original floor is actually underneath the roofing that is there now. At any rate, so because at one time, and I'll just do this in passing, which you're already aware of, but the roofs of these skyscrapers, 11, 12, 13, stories high. But I've learned the last few years, the roofs of these buildings, these great buildings, were used for very, very interesting and very productive and very important things. There were Gladdy McBean, the building is gone. Gladdy McBean had a showroom on the roof of one of the buildings, and the exterior portion they used for the garden. They created garden fountains, and then they brought potted plants and things like that, so that their garden section was, you were indoors on part of the roof, and then you walk outdoors, you're on the roof of this building, and here you are in the garden section of Gladdy McBean. And then the Starlight Ballroom was down here, in Long Beach.
Where was the Gladdy McBean?
I don't remember the building. It's gone, because I called you when I discovered that, and you said the building was gone. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the building.
Okay. I'll look in my emails.
Yeah, don't remember the building. But it's just that a lot of rooftops were used for very interesting purposes at that time, and who knows what's been. And you already mentioned the Oviatt, which is a magnificent. The Oviatt is a Spanish village, for God's sake. To have barbecues and festivities and parties and all sorts of things. So it could be amazing what is still buried or covered up in some of these buildings that we may yet uncover.
So we have empathic homeowners associations to thank, and I hope that they're out there in downtown Los Angeles and Long Beach still. So Brian, I want to thank you. That was a fantastic narrative.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I was involved with it, because it was one of the most exciting, sort of interesting jobs. And plus, just briefly, we did the mural did receive a preservation award from Long Beach Cultural Heritage, and of course the award goes to the building. So Jack and I went together. Jack accepted the award, and I didn't get one, but I don't take that personally in any way whatsoever. But and ultimately, it really didn't go to Jack. It goes to that. He deserves it because he really held everything together. But it goes to the building. The award goes to the building. So it did win an award, and that was nice. It was nice to get that, to be recognized. So it was a great experience. It was a very, very interesting experience. I was almost killed.
How were you almost killed?
Oh my God! Oh, I don't think I can tell that.
Okay.
I don't think I can tell that. It would incriminate the murderer. So he wouldn't appreciate that. But let's just say I almost died doing that job, and that's not a joke, because we're on the roof on the 11th floor. It was not very safe.
The closer you get to the
tile, yeah, trust me, the crazier you get. Yeah.
So will you leave us with that maxim?
Oh yeah,
in full.
Oh, in full?
Yeah.
Oh yes. Well, through my life in tile, I have discovered that the closer you get to antique tile, the crazier you get. Except for me, of course. I am immune to that entirely. It doesn't affect me. So I'm okay. All right? Is that right, Richard? Tell me, Richard. I'm okay, right? I'm okay.
Thank you,
You're
Brian.
Okay. So if I'm okay, are you okay? We're okay. All right.
My name is Emma Roberts. I'm in the Rare Books room at Central Library, and you're listening to You Can't Eat the Sunshine.
And we're done. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to our podcast for March 2nd, 2015. You Can't Eat the Sunshine is the name of this podcast, and I truly believe that. Kim, our guests probably want to send us an email and tell us that we should give up the fruits of our labors more and just give it up and just keep on keeping on. And if they want to do that, how do they do that?
Well, if you mean our listeners as opposed to our guests, Brian and Jack may want to tell you that, but our listeners, yeah, they'll probably be sending emails saying, "Calm down, you guys. It's okay. There will still be historic buildings in Los Angeles, even if they knock down 400 of them a day." Well, I don't know if I could survive that. But yes, you can contact us, and we're always happy to hear from our listeners. You can send an email to youcan'teatthesunshine@gmail.com or through the contact link at www.esotouric.com. Esotouric, of course, is our tour company, and we're out most Saturdays on the bus, and we'd love to have you, podcast listener, join us on the bus. It is what we do, after all. And if we see you on a bus tour and you let us know you're a podcast listener, we will be happy to hear it. You could also join us.
It's actually like one of the great pleasures. It's like every month I have a tally sheet.
You do?
When you get on the bus and start talking, and I see it's usually a woman. I see a woman about 5 seats back from you smile and say, "I know that voice."
Yeah. You can also see us, of course, at the Lava events that we organize, like the Forensic Science Seminars at Cal State LA, and, of course, the Lava Sunday Salons. So don't be a stranger, podcast listener. Let us hear from you. And if you're inclined to rate the show, wherever it is you're picking it up, iTunes or Spreaker or what have you, why, it's even on our YouTube channel now. Please do so. We're always appreciative of ratings and you passing the link around to your friends who might dig it, too.
Good. Okay, Kim. Here's the sheet. This is we're in the home stretch. This is the exit to the podcast. You are going to quickly bring us up to speed on some upcoming tours. Mm-hmm. Weird West Adams is the next one coming up, and we're gonna have some really good special new pictures on that one. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Well, of course, we're heading into a season of crime bus tours, and that's my babies. So these are all tours that I wrote, and Richard helped me develop into something that doesn't take 17 hours to get through, and that actually has a narrative arc. He learned that in cinema school before they threw him out. And the first of these... I didn't know. I was thrown out of film school like 3 months into my stint in film school when I was 17, and I did not learn that in cinema school. I actually learned how to write a screenplay. It was taking a second. Thank you, Brian Burke, old Crossroads person. So I was at the Sundance Film Festival. Nathan and I had been involved in making this film for Scott King called Treasure Island, and it had won some award. Nick Offerman is in it. Don't make people look at this movie.
Your first husband is in it, who hated me, and I was actually directed not to talk to your. He was your former husband at the time. I was actually directed not to talk to him. Anyway, so we get to Sundance, and of course nothing happens, which I knew, but you have to go because of course the police have just raided my grandfather's store, and there's nothing else to do but go to Los Angeles and work on a film. And you're walking to the bus station, and you run into an old friend of yours from high school, who happens to be an up-and-coming producer, and they say, "What are you doing here?" And you say, "I'm looking for my next step." And they say, "Good, let's come see me next week. You're in LA, yes, come see me." And then you go visit them, and you actually learn how to write a screenplay, which is really good because
your pickpocketing project.
I was working on it because of course my grandfather's pimps were really good pickpockets, and I decided that I wanted. It is a lot. So the point of all of this is not about writing screenplays, which is a complete waste of time. The point is that I wake up today and I have 6 million things to do, and I have about 2.5 hours every day to work on my writing projects, which at the moment is to finish the tour book, which is totally understandable. But for about 9 months after we quit the Los Angeles Athletic Club, I actually worked, 6 months maybe, I worked very hard getting up to speed on my novel, and literally with those 2.5, 3 hours I have every morning before just the world comes crashing through the doors, I thank God every day for Brian Burke and that time I spent learning about narrative structure, because you really can't write a modern novel without it. Look at Ask the Dust and Dreams from Bunker Hill. Yeah. You just can't. And so learning narrative structure is really important for writing. Dashiell Hammett did the same thing. All the great writers went to Hollywood to learn how to write a screenplay because they knew intrinsically it would help their novel writing. And so,
I want to thank you for taking so long that I can just burn through these upcoming crime bus tours, which you have structured. And there is a method to our madness, and all of these are 4-hour tours that you, listener, will love. March the 7th, it's Weird West Adams. That's a neighborhood. It's below the 10. It's just to the west of downtown. There's some beautiful old mansions there. Terrible things happen in West Adams. And we'll walk through Rosedale Cemetery. So that's March 7th. Pasadena Confidential with Crimebo the Clown is Saturday, March 21st. That's a tour about rocket science, black magic, suicide, rose queens, presidential assassins, and independent film. That one's fun. I have a brand new tour. It's called Hollywood with an exclamation point, and it debuts Saturday, March 28th. I am a native of Hollywood. I had a lot of weird adventures in Hollywood as a child. It really shaped me. And this is a tour of my Hollywood. These are the places that set my little antenna a-jingling. And in addition to going to just some of the most beautiful historic sites in the city and getting in-depth and personal with them and talking about just some really weird stuff that was part of my background growing up. Some pretty wild and juicy stories about Sunset Strip life in the old days. We're also going to have some crimes. Some crimes that will chill your blood and freak you out. I found some really good ones you've never heard about before. You think you know about Hollywood murder? Forget it, baby. Get on this bus. Well, you probably don't know these cases, but I do, and I love them, and I'm here to tell you, if you like beautiful buildings and weird crime, Hollywood's the tour for you. Okay, April the 11th. April the 11th. There's no 7 in that. Hotel Horrors and Main Street Vice. It's a downtown double feature. Well, we call it that, but it's really back to back. You know, when we launched that tour, it was...
Don't even start.
Okay.
It's a single tour.
It's a single tour. It's beautiful hotels and crime scenes and B-girls and prostitutes and serial killers and freak shows and geeks and... Downtown used to be so interesting. All the buildings remain, but the weirdos are gone. But we try to bring them back on this tour on April the 11th with no 7 in it. April the 18th, also with no 7th in it, and getting close to filling up already. A very popular tour, The Real Black Dahlia. In fact, our most popular crime bus tour. The tour that asks not, who killed Bess Short? Well, we talk about that a bit, but who was she and why should I care about this 22-year-old drifter from Massachusetts who ended up cut in half in a vacant lot in the Leimert Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. And it really is a fascinating tale of a lost girl and her friends and a very, very interesting investigation in the era when the LAPD could not do their job without the assistance of reporters, which is some pretty weird stuff. Very, very unexpected until you hear about it, and then it makes perfect sense. Those were interesting times. April the 25th is another newish tour. We've only given it once before. It's called Echo Park Book of the Dead. It is also a crime bus tour. And along the lines of the Hollywood tour, it's a mixture of beautiful buildings and really strange stories. But
one of the last ones is we're going to have to get on the Arroyo Seco Parkway to do one of the last crimes. Yeah, the helicopter.
Not a crime, an accident, but a truly twisted story. We'll definitely change.
There's a crime associated with it.
Yeah, it's going to change the way that you think about that part of the world, and that's our job, right? That ends the crime bus series, and on May the 2nd, it's Charles Bukowski's Haunts of a Dirty Old Man, a tour about the poet and writer and friend of Joan Job Smith, who made himself up from postal worker and a contributor to some underground magazines into a world-renowned poet, novelist, and icon of the counterculture. It's a really interesting story of an abused child in West Adams.
Yeah, West Adams.
Who really pushed himself through the fire, always driven by a love of language and a desire to tell true stories of the low life and to really practice compassion. It's a lovely tour that you wrote, Richard. It's one of my favorites of your tours, and it always brings out...
You like all my tours, Kim, but
do.
This tour is different in that it is really just about poetry, which is amazing that we can actually give a bus tour 4 times a year about the nature of poetry in the late 20th century.
And what I like so much about this tour is the people that it brings out, because contrary to your experience if you hang out on the internet and talk about Charles Bukowski with fans, Bukowski fans, when they're all together in the same place, are actually not assholes. They're some of the loveliest people you could meet. And that was a nice surprise, having run into some of the Charles Bukowski assholes on the internet. Let us move on. Also in a literary vein, May the 9th, it's Raymond Chandler's Los Angeles, a tour of downtown and Hollywood in the footsteps of the great Raymond Chandler. And on May the 16th, a once-a-year bus adventure with my colleague in rock and roll writing, David Smay, who comes down from San Francisco to host Tom Waits' Los Angeles Crawlin' Down Cahuenga. And this tour is a tour of Hollywood and downtown locations and Echo Park that figure prominently in the life and work of the singer-songwriter Tom Waits. And we should get some more tours on the calendar, Richard, but that's a really good season.
We have tours listed through May, and yes, I do have to get June and July up. That was on my list this week, and it'll happen next week.
Okay, that's fine with me.
It's okay, Kim. Yeah, it's okay.
It's fine.
Thank you, Kim. So Kim, thank you as always for bringing us home. I really don't know what I would do without you, darling. Light of my life. I want to thank you, Kim. I want to for making this possible. I want to thank everyone listening. I want to ask you to continue to listen, and I want to remind you,
you can't eat the sunshine.
You can't eat the sunshine, but you can make a beeline for the best of the coastline. La 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 la. Skid Row, Solano Canyon, the Doria, and Pico Union, the long-lost neighborhood called Hermina, between South Pass and Highland Park, Grand Central Park. It is divine. You can't eat the sunshine, but it's a gold mine of fabulous oddities like Bruges, Years, Dairy, Angeles Abbey, Bob's Big Boy, in Downey Forest Lawn Cemetery. You can't eat the sunshine, but make a beeline